Time travel journeys. Unlock your past, empower your future, and supercharge your life. Hello, everyone. This episode, we're talking about a groundbreaking approach to personal growth and professional development: time travel. Imagine exploring your past, present, and future with the guidance of an expert coach, uncovering hidden passions, talents, and strengths that can transform your life. Using a unique methodology of self compassion, self confidence, and meaningful social connection, this program empowers individuals and communities in overcoming self doubt, anxiety, isolation, and depression. Time travel journeys is a truly transformative experience that takes you on an incredible journey of self discovery, using a combination of mindfulness, visualization, and storytelling to help you connect with your inner self and unleash your full potential. Join us on this journey and discover who you truly are and who you aspire to be. With time travel journeys, you can unlock your past, empower your future, and supercharge your life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this. And if you're ready to take on the next step towards a happier, more fulfilling life, then check out Time Travel Journeys today. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show. I'm so excited that you're here with us today, and you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Let me introduce our super amazing, innovative person that we have on the show today. Mike Iskandar is on a mission to solve the global mental health crisis that strikes during childhood and lasts decades into adulthood. His work has led over 12,000 students, teachers, and company employees on an unconventional journey to deeper self-compassion, self-confidence, and meaningful connection. Mike is a TEDx speaker, innovative curriculum designer, and founder of a breakthrough social emotional learning program, Time Travel Journeys. His unique problem-solving approach comes from his diverse range of experiences as a world traveler, youth tennis coach, entrepreneur, and leader of a Fortune 500 company culture task force. He holds degrees in journalism and sociology from the University of North Carolina. Please help me welcome our guest, Mike.
Thank you, April. Really appreciate that. Great to be here. And I think you put your own twist on that, some of that intro stuff, and it was really poetic. Thank you for making me sound better than I probably am. So.
Nope. I added all of the things that you hold and are all of the greatness that you are. So you got to pump yourself up too, because you're doing so many incredible things. So let's share with the audience a little bit about that. Let's start with just a little bit about you personally.
Yeah, for sure. So I live in Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina, and very, very focused on this time travel journeys project that I've been growing over the past few years. I'm also an employee of Southwest Airlines and have been a flight attendant for them for the past 13 years, and also have spent a number of years on their culture task force, kind of build their culture internally and externally. I pretty much love being outdoors as much as possible. And for all the screen time that we have to put in, I am usually just wanting to be out in nature. So
Oh, thank you. Well, it makes sense that you are a world traveler when you work for such a global airline. So fabulous. I didn't know that about you. And it was really cool the way that I got to meet you. And I had the pleasure of meeting you. And I got to see you speak. It was really great. Thoroughly enjoyed that. You're an incredible speaker. You've done a TED Talk. And so let's backtrack a little bit because you really are focused on time travel journeys. And so the story behind that, the why behind that, the passion behind that is incredible. Would you love to share with the audience about that? Where did
Yeah,
you
I'd
start?
be happy to. I think it probably started with a question that we are all often asking ourselves these days, which is, where did the time go? And
Mm.
I think every time I bring this up, I get a lot of nods like, yes, I find myself asking that as well. Time seems to be moving faster and faster. And 5 years ago, I found myself asking that question of where did the time go? And as I mentioned in the talk that you were at, I was approaching my 40s and realized I was still referring to myself as a recent college graduate. And I'm like, no, Mike, that was 17 years ago. Where did all that time go? And so I realized that we often ask that question, right? And we usually say it with a hint of regret and helplessness. And I just started thinking,
Mm.
what if we could actually answer that question? At least, what if I could answer that for myself? And the idea just popped in my head of what if I could travel back in time to all of the younger versions of myself and every age that I've lived so far? And what would I learn from those younger versions of myself about who I was and who I am today and who I want to become in my future? And I really caught on to this time travel vibe, and so I start researching time travel just out of curiosity. And after failing to find an actual time machine, I thought, what if my time machine could be other people? Like, what better way to reconnect with those younger years of my life than to just sit down and have a conversation with people living and experiencing each of those ages? So
Okay, so I have to stop you right there
yeah,
because I
go
think
ahead.
that is such a brilliant concept to
Thanks.
consider something like that, to consider, you know, actually doing an interview with every single age group, up until the point of age 40. Was there more to that? Or did you literally just think of that? Like, what better way to go back into time than to, see it from the perspective of these people?
Yeah, I mean, there was a process for sure of of reflection and thinking back to certain younger versions of myself, and you know positives and struggles. But I think it was pretty organic, and you're right. I kind of just gloss over that part, but it is, I guess, unusual that I took this like hypothetical what if, that we all kind of daydream and think of what ifs and interesting scenarios and possibilities, and um, was able to ground it into a real possibility.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that thought led to, and I was approaching age 40, and there's something about that phase of life that um, I don't know. I was just focused on it, right?
Yeah,
And
I
there was a
I
lot
can
of
attest. I can attest.
there's
Yeah.
energy and emotion that goes into that, and
Yes, there is.
and and so I just had this thought of like, I want to go on this mission, right? On this journey. Um, I was almost 39 when I was thinking of this stuff. So I thought, what if I spent the year leading up to my 40th birthday interviewing 40 people from ages 1 to 40 about what it's like to be the age that they are? And, what would that do for me as I enter this new decade and this new phase of life? And so I thought, of course, I started thinking about the logistics, and who are these 40 people going to be? Where do I do this? And that was the fastest, easiest part of the process because I knew I had to go back to my hometown school community back in Durham, North Carolina, and I was living in Orlando at the time, and so I started looking up the website of the school I used to go to. It's a pre-K through 12 school. I went through middle school and high school there, and I saw that there were some teachers there that I had when I was growing up. And so I reached out to this one teacher in particular, Henry Walker, who is just an education legend there, and reached out and was just like, I don't know if you remember me, but I've got this idea. And he instantly remembered who I was. Even this is like 30 years later that I'm contacting him. We might have had some contact, but he was just he was on board the idea. I think people's reaction was usually, Mike, are you okay? Are you, are you going through a midlife crisis here? But then also like, that could be really cool. So this environment in particular of the school that I went to growing up, Carolina Friends School, and this man, Henry Walker, like there's so much value on self-awareness and past reflection and just like understanding our own inner world. And so there was something really powerful about those themes. And then also the opportunity to capture the voice of every age of this community, up to 40. And I'll get more into this later of what I'm wanting to do with other communities of even going past 40. But for me at this time, it was just very clear. Year leading up to 40, I want to sit down with 40 people, ages 1 to 40. I found that environment very quickly, the context, which every great journey needs. And we pretty quickly pulled it together of finding those members of the community. Age 1 and 2 were kids of friends of mine that were part of the community. 3 through 18 was one kid from every grade in a pre-K through 12 school. And then 19 through 40 were alumni of the school. So it was a pretty nice, insulated community that we could tap into that wanted to be part of this. And so we got those, and there was a little bit of hunting, like, all right, guys, let's buckle down. We need to find a 27-year-old or a 32-year-old or like, so that was part of the adventure. But we had those 40, and I just, long story short, I jumped into it and did it. And it took almost a year to get all of those were actually technically over a year when I'll tell you the story of the 40th. But it was just this process of sitting down, did it pretty much in chronological order, walking in and sitting down with a 1-year-old, sitting across from, I show up at my friend's house who's got a 1-year-old, and he's like, so, like, what are we doing? How do you want to do this? And I was like, I don't know. How does your 1-year-old normally do her interviews? But I very quickly caught on to the magic of just capturing life at this age. And people often ask me about, did you really interview a 1-year-old? I'm like, yeah, I sat down with that 1-year-old and I saw this phase of life when there's so much wonder, right? And like awe, just basic sights and sounds and tastes and textures. And, she's staring at my nose and the lights and like, touching the texture of the tissue, pulling tissues out of the tissue box, playing with Legos, crayons, like all these really simple things. And then it just flowed from there. And I would just sit down and, the coherent conversations started more around age 3 or 4. But even those early ages, just watching life from that perspective and the playfulness and the sense of wonder and awe. And and then it was just once the conversation started, yeah, exactly. And then the observing, and then the conversations got into pretty much the same set of questions centered on what is it like to be the age that you are.
Yeah. And there was first of all, what a perfect playground area for research, right? This community that already has a rapport with you. You grew up in it. So you have friends and family. Your teachers are still there, amazingly enough,
Right.
So Yeah, it's really small knit, tight community where it was a perfect place to do this experiment. And I can only imagine what that community is like now after this experience and this empowerment and its like awareness, of going through this and you yourself, how you've grown and now you've created time travel journeys, which is really expanding into helping so many other individuals and communities. So this is really, really exciting. I'm so glad that you got to do that. What was the age that you really started noticing a more common pattern arise?
Mm. So I think there were phases of patterns, right? And one of those phases was the early childhood years. And I think um, I was around age 4, 5, 6. Like I sat down with this 4-year old, and that was the first time I was like, wow, I feel like I'm sitting across from a younger version of myself, right? And this kid just had so much joy and energy and playfulness, and he's talking about how he can waffles and he can do somersaults, and then I asked him, Davey, what advice do you have for me as I turn 40? And he just looked at me and said, I like you. And I'm like, well, that wasn't but the more I thought about it, I was like, that's a brilliant answer to that question, because it was just that theme of self-compassion. Um,
Yeah.
but I think, the 6-year-old, um, I asked her what her favorite place on the playground is, and she said that there's this secret hidden nest that no one knows about. I was like, oh wow. And I'm asking the teachers, do you know about this? And they're like, no. So we're saying, can you show us this secret hidden nest? And she walks me out to the middle of the playground and points to this old beat up tire, right? And this jaded adult voice in my head is thinking, that's the secret hidden nest. Then I see her and her friends in this tire throwing the leaves up and laughing and giggling. And I think there was just that theme of those younger years, of those realizing that we naturally have these qualities that we aspire to have now as adults, of imagination and
Ah,
creativity and
mhm.
playfulness and joy and um, just the silliness, like the energy. So I think there is a theme of in early childhood of what we inherently, the qualities that we inherently have, um,
Mm,
that just naturally come out of with these kids, the qualities they demonstrate that are so valuable to have. So
yeah.
that was one pattern, right? Like seeing those early childhood years. And then there was the shift to the middle school years, right? And like I could even, it was wild, like walking the same steps that I walked to the middle school. Like when I was shifting the interviews into the middle school, like my palms were sweating, my heart was being, I felt like I was walking into my first day of middle school again. Like I
Oh,
felt
yeah.
all that like anxiety and insecurity. And that was a theme of like those adolescent years, of seeing the shift that happens from
Mm,
those playful early childhood years to now kids talking about the fears they have, the anxieties, the insecurities, the
yeah.
stresses, um, the self criticism.
Oh,
Kids
yeah.
even opened up about how the hatred that they feel for themselves sometimes, the fear that other people won't like them. Um, and so I think there was that theme, second big theme that I saw, that shift into the adolescent years. And I think continuing into the later teens and 20s and 30s, we would all talk about like how we're still holding on to a lot of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that um, I myself was still had developed those kind of those qualities, those struggles during my adolescent years, and I carried them right into high school and college, in my 20s and my
Yeah.
30s, my jobs and my relationships, and like my whole sense of well-being.
Mm,
Um, and that was when I made the connection between like, what if what if I could go back to those early childhood qualities? And what if that's what my 12-year-old self, my middle school self needed when he was
yeah.
in his biggest struggles? What if he just needed to remember who he was, right?
Yeah.
In those early childhood years. And what if that's what these kids talking about their struggles, what if they could tap back into those inherent qualities and joys, right? That we, I think we are all born with.
Oh, we are.
Yeah,
So, wow. Again, I can only imagine what you were experiencing and what you're feeling as you were interviewing these beautiful human beings, these, these souls where you have so much recognition of yourself. And it's like looking into a mirror
yeah,
of, going back in time, time traveling back to the past. And so we're going to go to our first commercial. And when we come back, I would love to know how you were experiencing that and how you shifted the perspective of yourself, your adult self now, and what you were telling yourself back in your childhood when we come back.
thanks.
Hello, everyone. I am Kim Jacobs, the host of the Kim Jacobs Show, and you all know who's right here with me, Dr. Les Brown. How are you, Dr. Brown?
I'm blessed and highly favored. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a time you want to give yourself a competitive edge. If you got a message, you have some knowledge or experience, a story, or if you want to do something adventurous and exciting with your life that can increase your credibility, expose you to millions of people, I'm encouraging you to have your own talk show. I used to have a talk show. That one talk show catapulted me to another level. Now there are more people watching the internet, as you are aware, than television.
Yes.
Come on, somebody.
That's right.
Dr. Kim Jacobs, she trained people on how to have their own talk show. She will train you how to do that. And now, with me working, partnering with her, now you have the combination of an audience, expansive audience. We have over 4 million people in all of our platforms, and the coaching you need to grow your business, to grow your multi-level marketing organization, to draw more attention to yourself in this noisy economy. Go ahead, Kim.
So, in the training that I do, Les, I actually do a 6-week training. It's 1 hour per week. And each week I meet with the individuals one-on-one. We go through and we talk about all of the things that's necessary for a show to become a reality. We go from how to actually identify your focus area, what's going to be your ideal customer that's going to be tuning in. We'll talk about how to get guests, how to get sponsorship, how to go about getting your lighting, your branding, and your banners, and everything that you need to know. And guess what, Les? They own their own content at the end of the day.
And that's exciting. Now, if you're ready to create a shift in your business and in your life and increase your cash flow, I want you to go to KimJacobsConsulting.com. It's right there on the screen, KimJacobsConsulting.com. You know, people say opportunity knocks on every door. Right. No, opportunity stands by silently waiting for you to recognize it. So I want you to recognize that this is a time for you. This is an incredible time to have your own talk show. It establishes a level of credibility.
Yes.
And by being exposed to people on a regular basis, it allows you to strategically begin to impact and attract your audience. She can take you in a place in yourself that you can't go by yourself. So go to KimJacobsConsulting.com. That's KimJacobsConsulting.com. Did I say KimJacobsConsulting.com? Yes, you did. Very good. Make sure you go there and sign up for the coaching, and we're looking forward to working with you. You have something special. You have greatness within you. That's my story, and that's Kim's story, and we're sticking to it. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
And speaking of people making incredible impact, Les Brown, Kim Jacobs, and Mike, that's what this show is about. It's so inspiring to be able to share that with the world, the people who are really being the movers and shakers. So going back to all of these fascinating interviews at each stage and each age, what was that like for you on a personal level when you were seeing these beautiful children and looking into their eyes and kind of seeing a mirror effect, right? And noticing you back at that age. And did you find yourself so often saying, wanting to tell that, that 8-year-old, wanting to tell that 14-year-old a message of wisdom now that you are where you're at?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a really interesting process. I remember thinking that I was going to be this great source of wisdom for these young people, and I think I was mostly learning from them,
Yeah.
and really just being in the moment. I didn't go in with a big agenda of like I'm going to teach this kid this thing, but of course, yeah, it was an opportunity for me to kind of nurture those kids and encourage them and say what I wanted to say or needed to say to my younger self, right? So it's very
Yeah.
genuine in that sense. It was not me trying to improve someone else. It was me like seeing a oneness with the person across from me and saying like what that younger version of me had needed to hear all these years. And yeah, and so I think to the broader theme of the question, there was a really powerful connection between thinking of, and when the kids talked about their struggles and self criticism, it reminded me of my own self criticism.
Yeah.
But I thought about the the words that I would say to myself, right, and the words that we often say to ourselves that are we're hard on ourselves, right? We criticize ourselves. We're downright mean to ourselves a lot of times.
Mhm.
And I picture those words that I had said to myself so many times, and I tried to imagine saying it to these kids, right? To those younger versions of myself.
Mm.
And I just thought I was like almost taken aback. Like the
Mm.
wind was almost knocked out of me of thinking like, wow, I would never dare say those things to these kids. I would never say the harsh things that I have said to myself. I would never dare say them to these kids. And then it just connected. And if these younger people represent the younger versions of me, then I cannot say these things to myself again. Right. And of course
Wow.
it's not a perfect process, but there was
No,
something
but
so powerful about making that connection.
yeah, what a profound realization. Um, where in the present moment, our experiences and our emotions of frustration, anger, hate, all of the ones that we don't want to be in, and like you said, how horribly, how awful we are to ourselves, and we say nasty things and we cut ourselves down. And then you come to find that if you look back into our past self and you look at a younger version of ourselves and you were to imagine saying that to them, it's like almost gut wrenching. It's like you
Yeah.
said, I was taken aback, and I can picture that. Like if I envision my younger self, I would be like, I would never. And because, they didn't know any differently at the time.
Right.
And,
Right.
they're just having a different experience because, that's where they're at on the journey.
Yeah. It's a really interesting path to self-compassion, I think, to
Yeah.
think of those kind of those two steps of thinking of the younger versions of yourself and that they are represented by younger people in the world today, right? And so think of how would you treat, we often think of like treat yourself like your best friend, and that can be a powerful form of self-compassion. But I think even just to think of how you would treat a kid that came to you in pain, right, and struggling, and what you would say to that kid, and that's what we need to be saying to not just ourself but ourselves, right? Like in the
Right.
plural, those younger versions of ourselves that make up who we are today.
Right. Okay, so you've had the experiences with the younger kids. Let's start moving into the adult ages. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that was it was a broader variety of experiences, right? And like just a lot of really interesting storytelling and seeing people at these different phases of their life adventure, their life journey. Um, and of course, like, there was power in the same way that the younger kids took me back to early childhood. There was power in like going back to my and reconnecting to that sense of energy and optimism that I had in my early 20s and those college years. And that, like, I don't know, it was just like this anything is possible. I can take over the world kind of
Mm.
mindset that
Yeah.
we often, which can be naive, but really healthy in
Right.
a lot of ways that we
Yeah.
enter the world with in our 20s. So it's really powerful to go back to that. And then I think to the memorable now, several years removed from this now, another really powerful phase of this was getting to the mid 30s, right? Like 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. And I started to connect with people that I had grown, right? And so my brother and like a lot of my best friends from middle school and high school that I'm still friends with today. And it was really interesting to get to those years and um, to realize that like there's still I could still see that little kid inside of them, right? That I could
Mm.
see that common thread, that there's some personality or soul or spirit or essence that like stays with us, right? Because when I'm was so focused on the big picture of my past and looking at all these old photos and like I'm looking at my 36, 37, 38, 39-year-old friends that I'm interviewing now, who are right in my own peer group, and I could see that like, wow, that in the same way that we hold on to the insecurities and the doubts and um, the anxieties that we kind of develop in adolescence, we also are still holding on to the some part of us that we've always had, right? That we've had since our early childhood days. And it was just kind of this interesting moment of hope, right? That like, oh, those parts of us are still there, right? And I, of course, was experiencing that. I connected with those younger kids, and I could feel those parts of me awakening. But it was really interesting to think of um, just the concept of self, right? And it's really not self; it's selves, right? In the plural, like we are an accumulation of all those younger versions of ourselves, and even
Yeah.
I would realize later future versions. But like,
Mhm.
I think those parts of us, those younger versions of us, are still there. They're still part of us. They're still part of who we are, and we can tap into their wisdom and we can tap into those qualities and make them part of our present.
Mm. That's that's really, it's interesting because that has really been coming up in my awareness lately, where people have spoken about that, is that like you don't truly lose yourself. Because I like to say, well, we always have a choice to kind of redefine our identity. Because I go
Right.
into identity a lot, because I felt like I recently had a major identity crisis. And then I
Mm.
came to this realization of, oh, hey, actually, I can change that. And I can change the beliefs that I had about myself that created this identity. And so, but I've heard other people say that there's always that aspect of you. And like you were saying, it's like it's this soul, this essence, this something about us that is still there, and it's carried throughout each stage.
Yeah, and when you see a friend from like childhood that you've known your whole life, and you can instantly see it, right? Like
Yes.
you still see that third
Yeah.
grader or whatever. Like
Yeah.
the recognition is still there, the resemblance.
Very true. Very true. Okay, so cool. Is there anything else that you really grasped and caught on to throughout this process of interviewing every single stage?
I think it's just the idea that kind of you talk about with figuring out our identity, that we get to choose, right? We get to look back and kind of choose what we want to hold on to and what we want to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's this interesting interplay of those relationships with our younger versions of ourselves. Like some of those younger versions, and I'll do activities in the program that I will finally introduce to talk about what this all turned into. But activities around like that we can learn from. There are some younger versions of ourselves that can teach us, right? That we can turn to and that can teach us their wisdom. And there are some younger versions of and that can heal us even. And there are some younger versions of ourselves that we need to go back and heal and that we can nurture. And like, those are like wounded parts of ourselves. Right. And so it's just very interesting that we can have relationships with all the younger versions of ourselves. Right. And like, we can be healed by some and heal others and learn from some and teach others. And there's a whole community going on inside of us.
Yeah, there is. So you kind of got started in an interesting way of how time travel journeys kind of started coming about. You want to start talking about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I got to age 40, and there was this question of kind of hanging in the air of like, what am I going to do with age 40? And a friend of mine actually was like, oh, you need to be the 40th, right? Of the 40 interviews. And so on my 40th birthday, I was the 40th interview. And the way I did that was I had all of the people that I interviewed get together at the school that I grew up at, and they interviewed me about what it was like to be 40. So I had these. It was
How
the best
long did that take?
best birthday party ever.
Yeah.
I don't know. We kept it to a couple hours, but
Oh, that's cool.
it was like all these different ages now coming to me and saying, "What's it like for you turning 40? And what makes you sad? And what are your dreams? And what are your like? And how do you get through your struggles?" And so it was just this really beautiful experience. And it was like being in a room, and this like really emphasized that idea of that community within us, right? And like, because I felt like I was in a room full of my younger selves, right? And it was just this really beautiful experience. And so this was supposed to be the end of the project, right? And then I was supposed to like get back to the real world, right? But I knew that there was so much more to explore with this, and this was really just the start.
Well, yeah, you gathered all of this information now that you can maybe apply in a great way.
Right. And so I didn't have aspirations of a program or business or anything. I thought maybe I'll write a book about this someday. But it was just this question of what do I do with this now? There's something really powerful here. And I was just so eager to like get other people to experience this. It was almost like this, hey, you got to try this. Like, April, you got to try this thing, right? Like, go interview one person from every age that you've lived so far. But I knew that wasn't practical. So I was like, how can I bottle up this experience and, really like get other people to experience what I had just experienced, but in a structured way that I could guide them through. And so I first thought that I want to help adolescents, right? That was the first like group that I wanted to help, because it's that intersection of the magic of early childhood and the struggles adolescents hold on to. So like, what if we could go back to the root of where so many of our problems stem from? And so I I was coaching middle school tennis. And so I was like, kind of on the camp, really involved in the campus, and had done these interviews, and had moved back to Durham at this point. And just, I came up with a class idea of just what if I could take a group of kids through this experience of exploring each age of their life. Right. And then I was like thinking, well, what if we didn't just stop at the present time, but then continued into the future? Because so much of understanding who I was in my past helped to start informing who I wanted to become in my future.
Right.
So then that became the structure of a time travel journey. And so we had to come up with a class name, and I had some boring name, and head of the middle school, is like, we need something more fun, right? That's going to be like fun for middle schoolers.
Need
'Cause
to
it can't be
appeal
like,
to the age group.
yeah, right. It can't be like unconventional path to self-compassion or something. Like no kid's gonna take it. So then we just came up with time travel journeys, and started as a class. I was really building it as I went, as just as an elective class. 8 kids signed up for it, and it was just this experience of we all built our own time machines. We designed our own idea of a time machine to become like the symbolic trigger to go
Mm.
back in time or ahead in time. And then we just went through this journey step by step of them exploring each age of their life. And so we would pull together photos, we would relive activities like playing with Play-Doh or coloring with crayons or recreating pillow and blanket forts from childhood. I had them interview and connect with preschoolers to have the kind of the same experience I had of like reconnecting with those younger years.
Oh,
We were
that's a
right.
great idea.
Oh, beautiful! Like it was just
Great
magic
idea.
to watch those kids connect with the younger kids and experience what I experienced in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, it's so
Um,
empowering, when they feel like they get to, play a part in helping somebody else. And you're right,
yeah,
that sense of community, of,
right.
servitude. And yeah, it's just a healing experience in and of itself. Great
For
idea.
sure. So yeah, then we're writing letters to our younger selves, really like forming those relationships with those younger versions of us, finding out, accumulating, collecting what we can learn from our younger selves, and then we caught up to the present, and then took the journey into the future. Part of it was just like, I need more content to fill, right? Because they're they're only like 11, 12 years old. Um, so it's like, okay, what if we took this into the future? And then it was really cool getting them to explore who they want to become, goals and dreams and
Mhm.
aspirations for high school and college and career paths and life adventures.
Yeah.
Um, and we could connect the past to the future by looking at the future from the vantage point of those early childhood qualities. Like, what if we looked at
Yeah.
our future through the eyes of a 4-year-old, right? Of our 4-year-old self, like big imagination and just
Yeah.
wild possibilities. Um, and so I, had them kind of dreaming and creating vision boards and interviewing high school students, visiting a college campus, pairing up with career mentors,
Wow.
creating their bucket lists. Um, and then it was just like coming back to the present and looking at, okay, we just went on this journey. What can we learn? What can we pull from our past and future that can help us today? Right. And kind of like shrink the timeline down to like now. Right. And like realize those past qualities are not gone and those future qualities, you don't have to wait until later. Like there's things that we can bring into our lives right now and help build up our present sense of self. So I think what
Yeah.
it did for adolescents was that it expanded their sense of self. Like they're locked in, like and feeling the weight of being an adolescent. And this just like broadened their sense of who they are. And then that uplifted their sense of who they are. So it was a like super successful first class, right? And like really just I was winging it a lot of
No,
times.
that's winging it. That's amazing. You incorporated so much. Like, amazing, Mike, really, because I mean, you got him to do the creativity aspect, and going back to the past, building a time machine so you have that physical,
Yeah,
where they get to be creative physically, in the environment that they're in. And also going back to their past and bringing in the photos, and then being able to go and have that sense of community and leadership when they're talking with
right.
people that are younger than them, and then pushing them forward into visiting high schools, talking to career counselors. What are the other possibilities? How do I continue to be creative? You really, if you just winged that, that's really impressive. And I am amazed. But so much I find that when we're on the right track, when
Yeah.
we found that it factor, that the thing that we're here to do, everything just really starts coming into focus, and
Yeah,
everything
it
starts
flows.
happening, and things open up, and opportunities arise. And, the thoughts that you have are just like brilliant, and the connections come. And so that's one of my favorite parts. And I can absolutely tell that you got to that point. This is the thing.
Yeah, and it was just these really simple insights um, that apply to any age. Of like what I saw in that first group of kids is that they adored who they were when they were younger. Like the self compassion of those toward those younger versions of themselves was so strong. They adored who they were. They appreciated who they were. Even the bad stuff, they appreciated their resilience to get through it. And they got so excited about who they can become. And I'm like, wait, this applies to anybody. If you feel good about your past, right, at peace with it, appreciative of it, tapped into the gems of it, and you feel excited about what's ahead, naturally you're going to be in a better place in the present time, right?
Yeah.
Versus if you feel like regretful and bitter about your past, and you don't have anything to look forward to, that's going to affect how you are today. And so that was the realization that, like, wow, our past and future has a big effect on our present experience, right? And for all the messages about in the present, live in the moment, don't worry about the past, don't worry about it, like, there's more to the story than who we are at this moment in this version of yourself. So I was able to then expand on the class idea, right? Really create a curriculum out of it, create shorter workshop versions of it, start training other teachers to deliver this to their students, take this to other schools, take this to conferences. And then I just had this really cool turning point, again, very organic, of dad of one of the students, the first students that I taught, saying, hey, that thing that you did for my son and later his daughter, can you do that for my team, my company? So he had a team of consultants. So I'm like, there's only one way to find out. Let's give it a try. And so I created a team building version of this. And it was, again, just such a beautiful experience to see this group of people that work together, and to realize that, and I saw this with the kids as well. So there's that connection to self, huge emphasis on the connection to self and bringing out the best qualities of who we are individually. But I found that when you go through this with others, it's a really powerful bonding experience.
Yeah.
Right? When you understand the journey of your colleague or your team member, right? And the influences that have shaped them into who they are, and the struggles that they've been through, and the gifts that they are carrying forward. And then when you understand each other's future goals and dreams and motivations, there's just it's a tighter working experience.
You relate.
You relate. There's
the relation, the compassion,
compassion, empathy, right? There's commonalities. Like there's like, oh yeah, I went through that too, or I experienced that too, or I'm from that same area. Or
this is another beautiful way of being able to share our stories. And so much of us say, the power in sharing your stories, the power of stepping out on stage and your voice, the power of journaling, of writing it down. It's all the same thing, right? It's being able to get it out, to express ourselves, and to have compassion, self-compassion too. And, we're just all on this human journey. So one thing I'm very curious about is, as you were going through this process with both kids and adults alike, were there any times where, and I would imagine so, but where, there was those stuck points or those really emotional times where people, had this overwhelming emotional experience based on something that happened in their past? A lot of times we like to say it starts around the age of 5, where we first experience, something where we're like, this isn't right. And I'm not comfortable anymore. And your world is kind of rocked upside down.
You're saying, as the 5-year-olds, you start having those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a
right? A starting
pivotal
point, right?
moment usually, yeah, where we kind of first experience that moment of, you know, oh my gosh, this isn't right. And then you become, it's like that self-aware time,
Right.
you know, and then you feel self-conscious and you start getting a little smaller and you're like, whoa, what happened? Am I less than?
Yeah, so this can definitely be an emotional experience, right? And for me, it started with like recognizing the pain that my 12-year-old self was in, right?
Yeah.
And um, so it can be, it's certainly can and should be an emotional experience. It's an opportunity to nurture those hurt, wounded parts of ourselves, right? And also appreciate our resilience, right? Of like,
Mm,
wow, we've been through that. I just
yeah.
worked with a group of students in San Francisco, and like some of the kids there were a couple of them that wrote letters to their younger selves, and they're saying like, you're going to go through some tough times, but you get through it all, right? You get through it
Mm,
and you're stronger for it. And so I think there's, um, certainly opportunities to deal with to deal with tough times and to deal with wounds. Um, but we also, in the process of a time travel journey, we're putting guardrails on it and parameters, and like, it's not just tell me about your childhood. It's let's look at those things that ground the past into like tangible memories of favorite foods and snacks and games and toys and
mm.
adventures. And so we're filling those in. And of course, other things can pop up along the way on that journey. But I think it's my favorite answer to this question was from there's a school that I'm working with in Philadelphia doing a year-long version of this program. And that question came up and I brought it up to her actually, and the head teacher, and she said, good, like it's better that it comes up now and we deal with it versus bottling that up and holding on to it for decades, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like we need safe spaces to deal with this stuff and work
Yeah.
through it.
I just kind of envision, if that arises, I envision everybody just, loving on them, on that person and,
Yeah, yeah,
holding a space for them. And what an incredibly healing opportunity. And to be able to understand that at a younger age, because what you're
right,
really doing is giving people the tools to know exactly what to do when we go through traumatic experiences in life, because
yeah,
nobody gets out of that.
right.
Life is
Well, no, it's
what it
part of the
is.
human experience. It
It
really
is,
is.
and we need it,
Yeah,
and in as odd as that is, and it may be, but it's the yin and the yang. It's the
yeah.
you have to experience the darkness in order to appreciate the light, and it's just part of that soul's journey and growth.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, and I tell this story to kids and adults I work with of like my interaction with my 12-year-old self, who was a lot of the inspiration for this, was me like having opportunities to think back on that kid or envision myself like apologizing to that kid for the negative words that were
Mm,
like that kid was bombarded with that kid didn't deserve, but that voice of criticism. So like, I'm sorry for what you went through, for that voice that you listened to. And then secondly, to be able to tell that kid like, I've got your back, right? Like you're I see you now. Um
yeah.
and I'm not just trying to push you away or bury the memory of you.
Oh, that's very, very powerful. I see
Yeah.
you. I recognize you, and I'm not gonna bury it,
Yeah.
away. I'm gonna acknowledge that this happened and, now what? So, incredible stuff. We're gonna go to our last very quick commercial, and then when we get back, let's find out what is next. Stay
Great.
tuned. find out more about Bella Grace in the description below. And so coming back, Mike, this is all really, really cool. What is happening now with time travel journeys? And another really curious question I have for you, how do you know where to go? Do you just get referrals? Do people contact you through your website? Or do you actually look at maybe, some statistics on where the need is most greatly needed?
I would like to do more of that, of find out where the need is.
Well, I can tell you,
Yes.
I just moved here. And so this is kind of going on my own personal area. And so I don't know it well. We've been here a year. My kids didn't go to school here, but I have found that the suicide rate for middle schoolers is exponentially high.
Yes.
And I was shocked, Mike. I was truly, truly shocked, and it just broke my heart. I couldn't understand, like, why is it in specific areas? I mean, this isn't necessarily a low poverty, and and not that has to be an aspect of it, but what does make an area more, more adapt to those sorts of things, where where I was, there was more things like school shootings. Not to be proud of that, but so the suicide rate wasn't really a big thing. It wasn't on the rise, whereas I see it here. So if we start talking about statistics, like when I was back in law enforcement, we really did a lot of that. We did a lot of research on knowing where is the crime happening, why is that, how do we get to the root cause, and what do we need to do to make a change?
Yeah, so we're certainly in the midst of a youth mental health crisis, 100%. And that suicide rate and that depression rate is astonishingly high in many, many places across the board. So that is always going to be in my heart, to work with schools and groups of kids and the teachers that are with those kids every day. I'm also, so referrals are a big part of this, of, teachers, parents, conferences that I go to and speak at, will connect me to schools that I work with. And then really the bigger aspiration now I found is that this is even more powerful as a full community experience. So I've had this experience of, working with teams, companies that, the parents will work in. And my vision really is to create full community experiences where, even similar to the 40 interviews from 40 ages, I want to do that in more communities, and even go up to age 80, right? Or age 100, right? Like, capture the voices of every age and it could be, there are multiple ways to shape it. But have that experience of capturing the ages of every age of a community. And then creating this programming, not just for the kids, but so certainly for the kids in school, but also for parents to go through with the kids, for companies to go through, for companies to offer their employees a chance to do parent-child workshops, because a youth mental health crisis spills into the workplace. It affects how employees are doing their job. So I've just found, when you get the parents involved, when you get companies involved, when you get people from all ages in a community involved, when you get mentors involved, it just strengthens that experience for the kids going through this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if everybody's on board and has the understanding and awareness of, I always like to say that, the healing, if you want to make a big impact on the world, you got to start with yourself. And, it all starts there. And the more work that we do on ourselves, it just trickles, out into everybody else that we're in contact with. And so it just helps raise that vibration. The rising tide raises all ships.
For sure. And when we can, understand ourselves, and then understand what others are going through, right, in our community, that there's the self-compassion and the compassion for each other, and that just all works together in a really beautiful process.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to make sure everybody knows how to find you, because I think you're right. It's building that awareness by, okay, I'm going out and I'm speaking to communities. The referral aspect. I did a TED Talk. That's a great way to really build awareness. I think that you were brilliant with your title too. Time travel journeys. It really is. It speaks to so many people on so many levels, and I think you even used a little rocket ship, right?
Yeah.
Which is super cool. And I like that, because it does speak to
Thanks.
all levels. It brings a sense of fun and creativity. And to me, in my mind, it is an image to be creative. When we think about just space travel in and of itself is like, wow, there's so many possibilities and so much that we don't yet know. So the way that everyone gets in touch with you is to really visit your website. Also, check out the TED Talk, and that should be in the description of this video as well. And the website is www.timetraveljourneys.com. That's TIMETRAVELJOURNEYS.com. And that too, again, is going to be in the description below. There's going to be many of you watching this replay, so be sure to check that out. Also, if you have any comments, leave them in the comments section below, and we'll make sure to get back to you. Mike, is there anything else that you would like to leave with us today? You've been such an awesome guest. You've done so fun things. I just love what you're doing out there. Is there anything else you want to leave us with?
Thanks. I'll leave you with an activity that I have participants of this program go through, which I think is so interesting to see what people come up with. It always seems to be a rich experience for participants. So obviously we all have our challenges. These are challenging times, and to think of a challenge that you're going through in the present time, whether it's a goal you're trying to achieve or a problem you're trying to solve, and to think of what advice would a favorite younger version of yourself give you regarding that problem or challenge, and what advice would a favorite future version of yourself give you regarding that. And I just over and over and over, I see people coming up with solutions or insights that they would not have thought of from their present perspective. And so I think and it's all looking within, right? It's not giving anyone any answers. It's just the spark to look within to your own internal wisdom of your past and future selves, and to see what answers they would have. What would that 8-year-old or 4-year-old tell you if you shared your biggest challenge with them? And what would that, future version of you, the 80-year-old or version of you 10 years from now, or whatever it is for you, what advice would they give you? And I think we can all look within ourselves and find really powerful answers to the challenges we're going through.
Oh, that's really cool advice. That's a really cool project to do. Everybody take a pen and paper, write that down. What does your present self say to your past self, or past self say to your, anyway, that's amazing. And actually, I just had a couple of comments pop through. Wanted to share them with you. Manly says, what does Mike want to say to his future self? The last part was cut off, but that's what it says, self. So what do you want to say to your future self? That's a great question.
Yeah. So I, practice having a very powerful vision of my future self. Right. And so I think I want to thank my future self for doing the actions and
that's good.
having the bravery and taking the actions that needed to be taken to get to make my life better. Right. Because that future self is living a more epic life than I'm living right now. And I think there's gratitude for showing me the way too.
Oh, that's, those are very key ingredients, right, Mike? Where, we're the gratitude, that's beautiful. And then that key aspect of being brave enough to do the things that sometimes seem scary, but in order to do those most powerful things that you need to do to achieve greatness and to really show that to the rest of the world. So, really cool response. And then I have another one that came in. If you watch this 5 years from now, what would you like to be reminded about?
I think I just want to remember this phase of life that I'm in. I don't know how I'm exactly going to feel in 5 years, but I just want to remember this feeling of optimism and excitement that I have for what I do.
Mm,
Right? Because it's easy to get
yeah.
dragged down by the fires we have to put out and the stresses.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there will be moments in 5 years when it would be helpful for me to remember April, April 25th, 2023, and the excitement that I had. In the same way that it's helpful for me to remember the sense of playfulness and imagination that I had when I was 6. Right?
That's a good one. That's a good one for me too, because you're right, Mike. As we do things that, we're really trying to make an impact on others and the world and show them, the greatness within. It can be easy to get tangled up into the mundane and the day-to-days and some of the process. And at the same time, the majority of the process is really exciting. And you're right to just
Right.
hold on to that excitement and joy within it. So, thank you again so very much for being a guest on the Wellness Driven Life Show. We are honored to have you. It certainly was a pleasure. I'm excited to have others check you out, check out the TED Talk. It was super fun, and to visit your website and to really get involved and to make an impact in their community.
Great. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this experience.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. So, for everyone else watching the replay, thank you again for being here. And I want to let you know goodbye for now, and we will see you tomorrow.
Take care.